Well, welcome everybody to another virtual coffee with Software Equity Group. I'm really excited today. I've got Leo Tucker with me, and Leo Tucker is the COO at KMS Technology. I had the privilege of meeting Leo. It was about a year ago, maybe just over that actually, Leo. You were working on a deal opposite me and doing some tech due diligence for a private equity firm. And got to become a little more familiar with your guys' work and was obviously very impressed, and obviously had the privilege of working with you on some more recent engagements where you're actually working with my clients. And so thank you for that. I thought this would be a really fun virtual coffee such that we could provide some insight to the SaaS and software community about some of the things that people can do today to prepare for a future liquidity event. From a tech DD point of view. And so that's really the nature of the discussion. Before we kick it off, we just need to first toast and say welcome to Virtual Coffee with Software Equity Group. Leo, really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you, Allan, and I very much appreciate the opportunity. And as you referenced earlier, appreciate the fact that we've had the chance to work together several times over the past year. So thank you. We've always enjoyed that.
We'll appreciate it. Likewise, feelings mutual. So I thought maybe we would start with just a brief introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into this? And maybe give an overview of what KMS Technology does.
Sure, perfect. So as you mentioned earlier, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at KMS, which means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So specifically as it relates to me, I own sales, marketing, delivery, HR, customer success, all of the operations on the US side of the house for KMS Tech. Let me tell you a little bit about my background, and then I'll jump into KMS Tech more, because there's a US part and there's a Vietnam part that we'll touch on in just a minute. So my background actually is very much on the business side. So I have been on the go-to-market side for about 25 years. My most recent company prior to KMS saw me be the CMO at a PE-backed software company. I was the head of marketing at another PE-backed company before that, and then had many years of product management and consulting along the way. KMS was founded about 12 years ago. We have a team in the US that I've already talked about, as well as about 1,000 people in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Our core businesses are around technology consulting and around software development, offshore software development specifically. Worked with 140 or 150 different companies, hundreds of different projects around every technology stack you could ever imagine. So when it comes to building software, that's what we do. KMS is unique in that we've been on all sides of the table, right? We've been taking investment as a software company on the other side of PE and VC money. We've done a ton of diligence work, as you referenced earlier. So we go in and help PE firms primarily as they consider whether or not to invest in a company. And then we've also, because we've done that and know what to expect, coached companies that are considering going into a process. And this is some of what we've done with SEG and a couple of others. So we feel like we've got a unique perspective that covers all angles of the diligence process.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Absolutely. You guys bring a lot to the table. So I, about 3 or 4 years ago, I began a process where I was going to remodel my house, and I hired an architect, and the architect came in and created some wonderful plans, and then we submitted them to the city, and the city's first reaction was, great plans, you can't build it. You missed the setback requirements. That was a big misstep, and a costly one too. And so like to use that kind of architecture 101 example analogy, if you will, from a tech perspective. And so, what are the 4 101 technology diligence items that SaaS CEOs should consider if they're going to be interested in a liquidity event in the near term, or say 2 to 3 years?
Sure. And I'm glad you referenced the time frame at the end there, Allan. That's a super important part of this. Because if you're going to be selling sometime soon, or taking an investment sometime soon, then there are things that are in your control and things that are out. So let's focus first on those things that are in your control near term, for those people that are looking quickly. The first thing I would say is document. It's remarkable. We work with a number of companies that are going into a process or that are in a process who don't have a solutions architecture document. In your house example, it's like not having plans, right? Not a good thing. So make sure you've documented. And if you're not sure, document anyway. Document more than you need to. Because not only will it make it easier on the company or on the person doing the diligence to really understand what's happening, but it will also help you to tell your story more effectively, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words, and a diligence assessment is no different. So we want to see those documents. That's something that you can do in a couple of weeks if you haven't done that yet. So that's very near term. But a second piece of this is just like anything else, know where your issues are before you're asked about them, right? So it's one of those one-on-one things. Again, in your example, you would hope that someone would have known that before it got as far along as it did, right? Same way in technology. We strongly recommend bringing someone in from the outside to take a look at your architecture, to take a look at your code, to talk to your people, so that you can get an unbiased opinion of how do we stack up and where do we have a problem. Really, really prepares you to be able to then address that problem in a proactive way and positioned in a way that's going to be helpful for you, right? And then, there's another piece of this, which is telling a story. And I use that word very purposely. There are a lot of companies that we talk to who have some of the brightest technologists. Perhaps they've got good documentation, but they can't tell a story. So identify on your team who tells the technology story in a compelling way that's going to make it easily understood by both a business and a technical audience, right? Because, and it may very well turn out that it's your head, and I'm just making this up, but it may be your head of product management who can talk both about feature function, basic architecture and coding if they need to, as well as the market. And then you supplement that person with someone more technical to add color as it makes sense, right? So think of it as a story, because that makes the whole process go more easily. And then the last one, Allan, is what if you've got more time, right? What if we are 2 to 3 years out?
Right.
Well, in that case, you can actually fix some of the underlying technology issues, or at least show progress along that path that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. So if you've uncovered an issue with the architecture, you might have time to start to correct that. If you have problems with code quality or technical debt, those are things you might have time to address in that case.
So just on that note right there, Leo, just how do they know that they have those issues? What seems to happen for me is often that people will be in these processes and they'll find out that I've got an issue. I didn't realize I had this issue. And so how do they figure that out 2 to 3 years ahead of time?
Right. Well, there are two surefire ways. One is your customers will probably tell you, so listen to them. But as I mentioned earlier, a great way is to bring in an outside third party who can take a look at it, give you an honest, unbiased view, because these are religious arguments. These are people's babies, right? Technology is their baby. And so you want to get someone looking at it from the outside and have them provide an opinion that perhaps may show things in a different light.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm going to agree with you on that. For me, it's just so obvious that you want to have a good accountant come in and help you with maybe a Q of E, a quality of earnings beforehand. You want a firm like Software Equity Group coming in and doing a tremendous amount of customer analysis and all kinds of financial analysis to make sure that everything is what we believe it to be. So there are no surprises. And so why should we avoid this most important part of the acquisition or the investment, which is of course the IP and the product? Why shouldn't we be focusing on that ahead of time? And I believe that the industry has done a very poor job of planning and understanding tech before they walk into that room. So on that note, Leo, we all have our scars from past deals and lessons learned. And I've been at this for 20 years. I've got a laundry list of them, unfortunately or fortunately, because you learn from them. What's the one story that jumps into your mind where you said to yourself, "Oh my God, does this seller, operator, whomever it may be, know that they're just shooting themselves in their foot?"
And I'm smiling because we've seen several variances of exactly the same thing over and over. So I'm not gonna name one story. I'm gonna kind of weave two or three together very briefly to protect the innocent, if you will. But at the end of the day, the biggest issue that we find is when people begin to answer a question or talk to a topic that they don't really firmly understand. Right. So how many times have you sat in, whether it's a technical diligence or any other part of the diligence within these meetings, someone's asked a question. They don't really know what the question means. As a result of that, they talk themselves down into a rat hole. And then they build on it, and they build on it, and they build on it. So for me, when I think about all of those experiences, that's a very common one that we see, and it's so preventable.
It is.
Right. It's so preventable with some coaching. Again, whether you're looking at deal terms or whether you're looking at the revenue, quality of revenue, whether you're looking at the technology, they're all the same. With a little bit of coaching, you can understand what to avoid and what not to. And the easiest takeaway for all that, Allan, is just to say, hey, you know what? I'm not certain. Let me get back to you on that.
Right.
Because the people on the other side of the table are just that. They're people too. They understand, and they would rather you do that and come back with the right answer than bury yourself behind something that's obviously not something you know where you're talking about.
Yeah, so I can imagine you've been on the side of the table where you're working with a private equity guy and you're just like, I can't believe this guy is digging himself this deep into this hole. This is unbelievable. Doesn't he just realize it's time to stop?
Exactly.
That's when we as the advisors wish we had the button. Oh man. I think you said you had another one. Were you going to give us another example?
No, I think that is the one that comes to mind. Anything else would lead me to specific names and people, and I want to avoid that.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that, and that's great advice across the board for any type of a diligence process. Just answer the question. So how about when you're looking at a company's product or seeing a demo? What are some of your kind of must-ask questions? And can you give us an overview of the key boxes a buyer is checking?
Sure. So I actually jotted some of these down. So I'm going to look down a little bit as I answer some.
Sure.
But let me just kind of preface it with this. We're looking at people, process, technology. How many times have you heard that?
Yep.
But it's easy to focus in just on the technology, but the people and process are important as well. So let me tick off just a small number here of the questions that we typically ask. On the people side, it's going to be how distributed is the knowledge, right? The big red flag, if you will, on the people side is everything resides in Allan's head or somebody else's head. And that's a real issue. So we're going to dig there, as will any other diligence person. Right?
And I'm going to stop you for a second. If you couple that with what you said earlier about a lack of documentation, it's exponentially worse.
That's exactly right. It's a great point. And what we recommend is documentation plus training a backup, right? Always know who the backup is, because that is the second question that we're going to ask. The follow-up we're going to ask to that is, okay, who's the backup, right? They don't have to know everything. And your assessor usually won't press you too hard as long as there is a backup, right? What's your development methodology, and what's your requirements gathering methodology, right? Those are important things to know too. And you may say, why? Well, it helps to understand where's the innovation coming from, right? Again, if all of the requirements for the product are coming from the CEO's head, then you probably don't have a long-term sustainable model for the product. In some cases you do. There is that occasional visionary who gets it all right, but in most cases it won't work. Yep. And on the dev process side, it gets to, will this or won't this scale as an organization, right? VC firms and PE are investing for one reason. They want that business to grow. Right. And if the development team can't scale because their process doesn't work, they've got a real problem. Right.
Let me give you one of my battle scars that's just specific to that. So I always tell my clients, when you're answering questions, there's a question is asked, there's probably 12 answers that show up in your head. Pick the one that has sustainability and scalability, that meshes well with sustainability and scalability. That's the answer to go with. I had a guy once who was talking about his dev team, and he waxed so poetically about how amazing his dev team was. The buyer's interpretation of it was, wow, you have an incredible group of engineers. I don't think I can find people nearly as good as that to continue to scale and grow this business. He talked himself right into a corner and didn't even realize what he was doing. Seems so basic. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. But again, that's a great example of, if you were to get another perspective, somebody would probably warn you, hey, this is how I took that. Don't go down that hole. Right. So kind of the same thing. DevOps as well. I'm not going to go into depth there, but the point I'm trying to make is, on the process side, we look at it from soup to nuts, from requirements all the way into production. Now you did ask about technology. So some common things that you're going to see, and some of these are more strategic, some are more tactical, but open source code.
Yeah, right? Talk about that.
What open source code do you have?
Yeah.
Right. And there are even black duck, what are called black duck audits, where someone will come in and they're looking for that. You may say, why? Well, people want to understand just a couple of things. One is security issues, because open source can introduce security issues depending on versions and so forth. And the other is licensing.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a place that can open you up to litigation. So know where your open source is, have it documented. Yeah. Right, is something we tell everybody. Another is the tech stack. Right. So what versions are you running? What is the tech stack? And importantly, why did you make some of the decisions that you made? Right. In a lot of cases, decisions are very defensible, even if it's not the most modern tech stack that you're going to ever see. And so what someone needs to be prepared to do is to provide the why. It's just like anything else. Provide the why. And if you do, you can justify most things, but be ready for that tech stack question. And then one question that we use, and this isn't in a book anywhere, but it's, if you had to do it all over again, what changes would you make? Right. And I say that I'm giving away one of our semi tricks. This is a great way if somebody describes the tech stack and doesn't come forward with what some potential issue areas might be. It's a great way to uncover them. Yeah. Because somebody in an assessment may say, well, if we had to do it all over, we would use AWS instead of Azure. Well, why? Is going to be my next question, right? And we drill down into that. And so really what I would tell your listeners is, be prepared for that question and be prepared for the follow-up to make sure you've got a good answer to it.
Right. And what I would say on that, just two points on it is, when you're in the diligence phase, the buyer is spending real money at this point. And the buyer wants to get a deal done. They're not there trying to find issues. And what they're doing is, if they are discovering issues, it's being done in such a way where it's, so how significant is this? What is the technical debt? Can I fix this, right? What may it be? But the bottom line is, you can't hide anything. And so don't go into these things expecting that you're going to be able to hide something. More importantly, recognize where your weaknesses are. And then, like you just said, Leo, these are the things that if I had the capital, if I had the time, that I would do in order to rectify these types of things. And just be open and transparent, and it seems things work out significantly better. On the open source item, I just want to revisit that one. So first and foremost, you mentioned Black Duck. There's lots of Black Duck types of firms out there, and in almost every deal I'm working on these days, the buyer is going to do a Black Duck or some sort of audit on the code to look for things like open source, or to look for things like improper use of third-party technology or code where they didn't properly license. We always suggest to our clients early on, hey, make sure you have an open source library. Make sure you document this stuff, you know where it's at. Nearly every client that we work with has open source. So it's not as though it's an issue where it's going to create massive problems and you can't have it, correct? It's more of properly document it and know where it is and know what you're using.
No, that's a great distinction. Very, very rarely, if ever, will you come across a code base that doesn't have some open source in it. It's fine. It's about documentation, maintaining licenses, making sure that you've got your libraries well documented, so that you know where it is. This is, when an assessment is happening, and you touched on this a second ago, I'll just expand on it. You're looking for red flags. The investor, the buyer, wants to invest, right? They're not there to look for reasons not to invest. They're there to invest in your company or buy your company. But they want to know, like anybody else would, what are some areas that either I may need to invest in after, or we may need to fix once we've purchased this. They're really they're looking for that. And so the more open, the more honest one can be, the better. That doesn't mean that you don't position things.
Correct.
Right? As with everything you do, but you're not going to hide anything. So don't try to play the gray. Just be honest about how you talk to things, and position it as best you can. But where there's something that's going on, take it on head on. Yeah. Right? Take it on head on, and then everyone knows and can make the best decisions from there. And the more you can do up front to plan for it, because you're going to get to that exit path or that junction in the road, you've got to be able to navigate those waters. And so that's really what it's about, which then leads us to the last question that I've got for you today, Leo, which is, if you had one piece of advice that you were to share with the software CEO that's considering, hey, I'm entering into an M&A process in 6 months, what's the one thing that you're going to tell them? Well, this shouldn't be a surprise, given that I've said it 2 or 3 times throughout, but it would be engage an outside source to look over your code, to talk to your people, to understand your processes, so that you can identify any problem areas before you get into the process, as opposed to uncovering them once you're in the process, because at that point it may be too late. And the one thing I'll say, and there are a lot of firms that can help with this, but the one thing I'll say, for probably true of any of them, an investment of a few $1,000 could mean even conceivably millions. That's right. On the other end, if you put the right foot forward with the right buyer, right? And on top of that, it will make the whole process easier to begin with. You'll feel much more confident, and the process itself will go more smoothly with your management meetings and all the diligence that you go through. Yep. Yeah. So let me add a little more fuel, a little more fire to that one. Speaking from real experience and speaking specific to KMS, I mentioned at the top of this that we had the opportunity to sit across the table from you, and you guys did a thorough review on for a private equity firm for one of my clients. Which was fortunately very positive. The client had done an amazing job. I've since had opportunities that were very challenging, and where we were not able to articulate as well as we needed to some of the very important aspects of technology and product. And you would think that's so obvious, but a lot of these software executives and developers, this isn't what they do every day. And you guys came in on one of these deals, and honestly, I don't think we would have got the deal done without you guys. And so I at Software Equity Group extremely grateful for all of the work that you guys provided on that. I know the client is as well. So much so that client said to me, Allan, these guys should be on every deal you're working on. so thank you for that. Thank you. Well, I appreciate the kind words on behalf of KMS, and yeah, it's been a pleasure. We enjoy doing that. At the end of the day, you're helping somebody, and you're helping somebody fulfill a dream, right? So it was our pleasure, and those guys in that case worked their butts off, and did what they needed to do to get it over the line. So it was great. Thank you, and thank you, Allan, for having me to talk about this topic today. I've really enjoyed it. Awesome, Leo. Thanks for joining Virtual Coffee with Software Equity Group. Really enjoyed it, a lot of fun, and can look forward to continuing to work with you in the months and years ahead. Yeah, we do as well. Thank you, Allan. All righty, cheers.